Hello.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Yes,
Let's
good, thanks.
good. Let's give it just a couple more minutes for people to come in. I'm so excited to see everybody here and to see Laura's on too. It's great.
Sager. Sager, come here. Come here. Pee. Come.
Blonde.
Give me that ball. That ball. Is that your ball? Come on, get the ball.
Who is that?
That's John Alpert. We just need to mute him.
I'll mute myself. Sorry. If I can figure it out. We're out overlooking the site.
Oh yeah, with a
Oh.
dog, maybe?
Yeah.
Share a screen. Share a screen. We'd love to see the site.
I have to figure out if I can figure this out. Oh, that's me. Okay, just a second. Okay. Oh, it's on blur. So let's unblur it. Okay, there it is. It's down to ground level, basically.
Yeah, your camera's not on, John, but that's okay.
Oh, all right. It's down to ground level, and all the previous safety protocols of covering up the trucks and things like that have been abandoned again, because the finish line is like an inch away, so they don't care about that anymore.
Okay.
Ooh, hear that? Wow.
John,
Okay.
do me a
Yeah.
favor. Since
Yes.
everybody's almost here, could you perhaps mute yourself?
You bet. It's a technological challenge for somebody like me, but I'm going to do my best. Thank you.
Lauren, I think you can probably, since you're the host, maybe?
I actually am not the host yet, but Jeff, if you can make me co-host, or you can mute him yourself.
I think Dan is the host.
Oh, that's right.
'Cause we're
Sorry.
on, yeah,
That's
we're on the
right.
senator's
Sorry,
side.
what
It's okay.
was that about the?
If we could try to mute John because he can't figure it
Oh
out.
yeah, I can do that.
Perfect. Thank you so
Done.
much.
Thanks,
Okay,
Dan.
and the senator he's here and will be here in just one more minute.
Is
on
there a
this one.
hi? Is there a passcode? I couldn't get in on my computer. I'm in on my phone, but I rather
Oh,
get.
odd.
Yeah, it's 032409.
I'm sorry, 032.
409.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, just a couple more minutes.
Gives me more time to drink my coffee. I'm good.
Perfect.
Nice photo, Andy. They really got everything. Capitalism is crazy. Is it gone?
Okay. ¿Es? No sé, cagado.
Thanks for holding tight, everybody. Just one more minute, and we should be able to get started.
Hi, folks. Sorry to keep a lot of folks waiting. We have a bit of miscommunication on our end about who was kicking off the meeting, but I'm happy to be here. And again, sorry to keep you all waiting. So I'm Brian Kavanaugh, State Senator for Lower Manhattan, and welcome everybody to our third meeting of the Manhattan Detention Complex Construction and Demolition Working Group. This meeting, as always, is co-convened by the offices of Congressman Dan Goldman, Senator Grace Lee, Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine, Councilmember Chris Marte, and Community Board One, with participation from a wide range of community stakeholders and participants in the demolition project. It is recorded, and as always, we will post it subsequent to the meeting. I think, let me start by welcoming a new participant. We are very excited to have Laura Dodge of Excel Environmental Resources, Inc., who will participate in this process, both these calls and also on an ongoing basis in the project as an independent monitor of environmental concerns that have been raised. Some of us have had great experience working with her before, and we really extend a warm welcome to her, and also thank the the city for this. Although Laura will be functioning independently and reporting to the community, her service will be paid for by the city of New York, which agreed that this was a useful addition to this process to ensure maximum transparency and accountability, and just that the community has the information we need to understand what's going on. Just so before we dive into the agenda here, just any of the co-convening electeds or community boards have any comments? Okay, hearing none. Just today's agenda will, some quick introductions, and then we will, hear various updates from the construction team and the demolition team, and then we'll have an opportunity at the end for community stakeholder discussion, questions, and comments, and hopefully answers as well as questions. Laura, do you want to just say anything by way of introduction?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, so thank you for the opportunity yesterday to visit with you all and visit the site. It was extremely helpful for me to obviously be boots on the ground and to meet the team and the elected officials involved in the project and the members of the community groups. I, as Senator indicated, my role is as an independent community monitor. What that means to me on the project is that I basically review the plans that are in place. I mean, I'm coming on to the project, obviously, in the latter stages of the dismantle. But, I did have to get up to speed and review everything that had already been prepared and issued, and find that the, environmental management plans, which include the dust monitoring, noise monitoring, vibration monitoring, to be consistent with, good engineering practice and compliant with regulatory requirements, as well as incorporating all those aspects of best management practices that should be in place. And then seeing the site yesterday gave me, an opportunity to see exactly functionally how everything is being implemented, and then meeting with the team. So I'll be taking all that information, monitoring the real-time live feeds. We have access to doing that. And we've been provided that since we were authorized to proceed latter part of last week. So we'll be issuing weekly reports, which will provide the community with an earlier picture of what's been going on with the monitoring data for the dust and the noise and the vibration monitoring, and working through sort of how that should look and how we are to address any excursion that might occur and understand the basis of it. And so that's what we're working on now. Those weekly reports will then be coming to the community. And then obviously the monthly reports will be continuing to be issued, by the DDC and the AECOM Hill team and the Gramercy team. So for those that know me from 250 Water Street and other projects in the city, I call it the way it is. I mean, I'm going to tell the community what I think from my professional perspective. If I think that there could be, something that is of concern that maybe that's not being addressed, I'm going to make that recommendation or make recommendations. If I feel that everything looks good and if I can answer questions, from a different vantage point perhaps than others on the team. I think that's one of the things that sort of the independent community monitor sort of brings to the table, is the ability to sort of have that independent perspective. Because, the one thing for the community members to understand is that I'm not a hired gun. I'm not here to, be leaning one way or the other. I'm here to call it the way I see it from my professional experience and consistent with best management practices and industry standards and with the approved plans. And then here also to help in any way I can in terms of answering any questions that the community may have, from my vantage point as an environmental consultant. So I'll leave it at that. And I just, again, want to thank everybody for their time yesterday. It was extremely helpful for me I feel like I'm part of the team now.
We're
So
very happy to have you part of the team. Any just quick questions for Laura about her role or the process here? Okay, good. Well, again, thank you. Welcome aboard.
thank you so much.
Laura. All right. We have a number of kind of updates, specific updates since last meeting and some meetings that have happened in the interim. But I wonder if it might make sense to jump into the construction and demolition update and then circle back to, outstanding questions and concerns. Does that make sense? Any objections? I think it's slightly different order than the agenda we circulated. Okay, hearing none. So go ahead.
Yeah, it sounds good to us, Senator. Thanks so much, and thank you, Laura, for that really helpful introduction. Before we do have our sort of regular presentation that I will turn over to Gramercy in a moment to go through slides that outline all the dismantle updates and updates on milestones. But before we get into that, just wanted to run through and address some of the questions that were sent to us following the meeting a couple months ago. So just to jump right into those. So there were a few questions about the status of the design RFP and the estimated start date for construction. So we had released the RFP back in February of 2024. Procurement is currently still in progress. We are expecting to have the selected design build team on board and to receive their notice to proceed in the second quarter of 2025. And then once they're on board, we will hold introductory meetings with this group and other community groups to discuss their design process, their anticipated schedule, when they think construction is going to start, all of those questions. So we're not there yet. We will be there soon. And so look forward to that in the coming months, and we'll be able to address more of those questions. Similarly, there were questions about how the estimated start date relates to the projected end of the dismantle. So again, we're looking at wrapping up or substantial completion of the dismantle project at the end of January of 2025. And then, as I just said, we'll start the new facility design in the second quarter of 2025. So there should just be a gap of a few months in there between those contracts. I think for discussion at the end, we can talk more about the NAC meeting. There were some questions from the community board about when we'll be holding the next NAC meeting. So I think we want to open it up for discussion with this group as to how folks would envision kind of the role and the function of the NAC as opposed to this working group and the community board quality of life committee meetings that we already go to, and how whether it makes sense to resume the NAC or to kind of fold that mission and purpose into this group. And then similarly, questions about, as we're talking about environmental concerns and considerations on the dismantle project, how all of that is going to loop into procedures for the new facility construction. So again, once we have the new facility design builder on board, we will be bringing them out into the community, and we can absolutely have discussions with that team, with their contractors on board and in the room to talk about how they're going to proceed with environmental monitoring, environmental mitigation, and address those specific concerns. But we need to have that team on board first. So again, we're looking at that, those conversations we can start having in the spring of this coming year.
Laura?
Yes.
Lauren,
Well, wait, Laura?
No,
Yeah.
Lauren, I apologize. The one thing that needs clarity based on what you just said and Laura's welcome, which we're delighted to see her and have her, is the extent and length of the contract and our expectation, not request, not hope, our expectation based on long times of asking for an environmental monitor and getting it at, oh, I don't know, let's call it the 99th, 1 yard line. We bring it on is frustrating. Delighted to have her, but super frustrating. My expectation as board chair, from what I've heard from the community, is that Laura would be part of an independent monitor looking ahead, period, through the entire construction project. This is not okay, now we're finally down to ground zero and we're done. This is complete looking ahead. And if that hasn't been included, that needs to come back to the absolute first conversation, because we're here with Laura on November 14th. We've been asking for over a year for things like this. I don't want to have the same argument and then have the building built and brought somebody on.
Heard. Tammy, we hear that request loud and clear. As,
你如果你出来指示你父母和你弟弟的话，就
and
not a request. It is not.
We hear your expectation loud and clear. What we have provided is bringing on the independent monitor. I know it is not on the timeline that any of us expected. Laura is reviewing all of the policies and procedures. We are going to take any recommendations from her. Let's see how the next few weeks go. But we do not have resources forward looking into the facility contract. So let's make the most of the time we have together. Let's get lessons learned from the independent monitor. I know that is not the response that you want to hear today. We do not have resources forward looking into the facility contract, but I hope that we are able to provide, a lot of information and to the community based on her review of the policies and procedures, any recommendations that we get from Excel, also how to look at and understand the results and the reporting, so that forward looking, the environmental monitor that comes on with the design builder, which is also a third party, can take those practices into account.
Elizabeth, I hear all of what you're telling me. Just understand that I've lived in Lower Manhattan 30 years, almost. So I predate 9/11. I've heard all the experts and department heads for what they told me, because I live across the street from the towers. Demolition and construction. No, our position will be, as it has always been, we want an independent community monitor. We wanted it a year ago. We want it looking ahead, because independence provides transparency, and there's no just like connection. This will not be something that I sit and fight back on quietly, and the community will take very well. I apologize for being like such a kind of a little witchy on it, but here we are, it's November 12th, and we're having this conversation. And the city, who has money to build the jails, can figure out a way to include an independent community monitor. And again, I don't always agree with what Laura says, and that's the goal, but at least I know as an independent monitor, her positioning is not being sold by what's needed for the construction project. So I apologize, but please.
Yeah, I know we do not see eye to eye on this. I hear you. I want to make the most of this meeting, and let's see what we learn from Laura, and tomorrow is another day.
I will.
But the way it is, I mean, I have other thoughts on this, like including the way that environmental monitoring happens on construction projects by design is by a third party and not by the construction company. And so this is a additional set of eyes in addition to a third party that the city is already paying for. I welcome Laura to this endeavor, but I I want to make sure that we are being like stewards of our resources. And so let's make it through demolition, and the design build project will start next year.
Since Tammy has been her usual thorough and not witchy self, I'll just say I share the concern that we ensure that there's an independent monitor going forward. But I think, again, I think the issue has been thoroughly articulated, and I do think we should, in the interest of the fact that we have 34 minutes remaining, that will be a continuing conversation, but I urge us to continue that.
Okay, so we'll definitely, I'm sure we'll loop back to this at the end with the discussion, but for now, thank you all. Let me turn it over to, I'm going to share my screen with the presentation and turn it over to Rich Peterson and Scott Krokoff from Gramercy to provide the dismantle updates. So let me get this up on the screen. Let me just check. Are you guys seeing the full screen mode of the presentation right now, or are you seeing the like behind the scenes PowerPoint view?
It's a behind the scenes view.
All right, let me try. Give me 1 second. I'm just unplugging the external monitors I had that I think was causing that issue. Okay. Are you seeing the full screen view now?
Yes.
I think so. All right, Rich, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hello, everybody. Rich Peterson, Gramercy Group, in charge of the dismantlement. So right now, everything you see in bold is what we are currently working on. The North Tower dismantlement, which is the part we are doing up against Chung Pak right now, is ongoing through January of next year. The commercial side, where the parapet info wall and waterproofing, is going on through the end of this year. And the residential side, like I just said, is going on through January of 25. South Tower dismantlement is nearing the end. That'll be going on till the end of this year, with substantial completion slated for January of 25. Here are some updated progress photos. On the left, you see the South Tower area. Right now, we're working through the basements, clearing them out and prepping them for berming. And on the right, you see the scaffolding where we were taking off the North Tower gym wall, which is adjacent to the Chung Pak building, and doing the repairs to their CMU as well as waterproofing. The environmental monitoring plan, which has gone over. Here you can see in the different colors, green, blue, and magenta, as well as black triangles, are the different monitors surrounding the site, taking care of the air vibration and noise monitoring.
Rich, can you just speak to, there's a couple additional monitors that have been installed since the last time that we met.
Yes,
and
you're
that's
correct.
related to the work that's going on. Yeah, can you speak to that?
So as part of our outreach with the residents of Chung Pak to ensure them that they're being protected, we have monitors that are installed in some of the common spaces of the building, as the residents didn't want the monitors in their apartments. So in some of the common areas, we have a vibration, dust, and and noise monitoring going on within the Chung Pak facility, and that's what you see in the upper left-hand corner there.
Thanks.
Here are some images of the exterior monitors that are around the perimeter of the site. As you can see, the one on the left is actually within our construction site, and the one on the right is just outside on the Center Street side on the north end. This is the samples of the reports that are presented. I don't know, Lauren, if you want to talk about this. This is the reports that are prepared and presented to the community.
Yeah, I think folks have seen these before, and as Laura alluded to in her earlier comments, we will continue to publish these on a monthly basis in addition to the weekly reports that she'll be generating for the community.
So the monitors we have on site, we do daily checks on those monitors to make sure they're up and running and operating correctly. Technicians come on site several days a week to do the same. And the CCL obviously is able to check the data if any community members come down and have any questions about the air quality, noise, or vibration in advance of the monthly reporting. Here you have the air quality monitoring. The first one, there were 9 instances where the dust concentration was above the threshold. It did not pass the permissible exposure limits. These were all evaluated and looked at, and they did not cause any concerns to the public or the on-site workers. Noise monitoring, there was 20 instances in September and 25 in October, where they were exceeded, generated by the construction activity. These were all associated mostly with AQS 7, 992, and 998. Where the monitor was located inside of our construction fence. The combination of machines loading debris on Baxter immediately adjacent to it were the cause, and mitigation efforts were as follows, where we adjusted the location of the North Tower Gym Wall dismantlement work. During the months of September, we had 0 incidents of vibration exceeding and 5 in October, which are in the areas where we are doing the removals, and they're on non-structural members. They're there for us to have alert and monitor our work.
Sure, and Rich, I just want to add one point of clarification under the air quality monitoring, where you noted that in October there were 9 instances where the dust concentration did reach above the threshold. Those instances we met yesterday, and we discussed this with the Gramercy team as well as with Laura in the room. So those were investigated at the time that each of those occurred with Gramercy, Vibra analysis, and the Chung Pack management, and were deemed not related to construction activity. It seems to be an issue with the monitor itself. So I just want to clarify for folks that those were not alerts due to construction activity, and those will also be detailed further in the monthly report that we publish. Okay, our usual slide, just reminding everyone of ways to reach out in between these meetings and find information both on our website as well as reaching out directly to our community construction liaison. I also just want to take another moment to remind folks, as we have in the past, if you're seeing things of concern on the site, it's great. I know you're reaching out directly to your elected officials in many instances. That's fine, and I don't want to discourage anyone from doing so, but we do really strongly request and encourage people to please include or copy our CCL on those correspondences. Please let her know. The sooner we get information, the sooner we can act on it. It is very challenging for all of us to have to try to determine what might be causing an issue if we're receiving photos or emails about it weeks or sometimes months after the fact. So please let us know in real time if you're seeing something that you are concerned about on the site, and please include our CCL in all of those communications so that we have a record of it and we're able to respond. Thank you. All right, and I think I'm going to stop sharing. We can always go back to any slides if folks have questions, but I think we want to open it back up for further discussion.
So Councilmember Marte is up, and obviously anybody else wants to question, let's use the hand function if you can. Chris?
Hey, thanks, Brian, and thanks everyone for joining. Lauren, my question, I mentioned this yesterday, but I showed you a photo that John Alper sent me where the tarp wasn't covering the debris on a truck. I know you say to send photos or any information to your team, but there should be a standard or best practices that is used by Gramercy to not allow that. It's been almost like every single week there's another incident where they're not following best practice when it comes to the construction site. And so I think there should be a conversation with the workers on site to make sure that they are following, the best procedures to protect not only them, but also the community around them.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for raising that here. And I know you brought it to our attention on the site yesterday. We do have Gramercy here today. Rich, if you want to respond, again, what the council member is referring to is, seeing some photos of trucks that appear to be leaving the site without tarps on top of them. Can you speak to what you guys are doing and protocols for keeping the community safe?
Yes. So the reason I asked for the photographs is because some of the times the trucks leave the site, they don't have debris in them, right? They might have something strapped down inside, or they might be empty. They might have done a swap of a container or be delivering something, and when they leave, they don't need to be covered. There's nothing inside of those boxes. That's why I asked for the photo, because it is our policy to tarp all loads that are leaving the site that contain debris and or RCA.
Okay, so Councilmember, if you haven't already, can you please forward those photos to our CCL? You can copy me in as well. We'll make sure that Gramercy receives them, and then if they need to have a discussion or speak to the crew on site, if someone's not following protocols, this will help them follow up with their folks on site. Because as Rich just said, the best management practice is that if they are leaving the site with debris, those vehicles should be tarped.
Okay, thanks.
Great, thank you so much.
Great. Tammy?
You said that the end of construction and demolition, pardon me, is slated for 2025. Can you confirm exactly what the condition will be in terms of how long? This is maybe going back to Lauren or Elizabeth. At what point in 2025 are we looking for demolition to be done? It's a two-part question. And then what is the anticipated start date based on the RFP for construction? So from the end of demolition to construction, can I have an understanding of that timeline?
What I can speak to right now, Tammy, is that we are expecting substantial completion of the dismantle project to wrap up towards the end of January 2025. Final completion will follow a couple months after that. And we are expecting the new design builder to have notice to proceed in the second quarter of 2025. I do not know the details of what they're planning as far as their construction schedule and the exact start date that they'll begin work, but we'll be having those conversations with them as soon as they're on board, and we can bring them out and address these questions once we have the new facility contractor on board. We can also say that the site will be maintained in a safe condition during any period in which there's a gap between the work.
Well, perfect. That gives me an opportunity to ask for the following, because it is a giant site that is comprised of two buildings, which used to have a public street through the middle. Since White Street has not been taken back and completely wiped off the map, we'd like to request, because based on what we know from construction and the process that we've had thus far, can the site be divided into two fencing? It's just about the fencing to enable White Street to be a through street to better enable pedestrian traffic and circulation back and forth in and around the site, instead of it being a giant, basically, barrier, which is what we have in Lower Manhattan already with the World Trade Center site. The more streets we take away, the less pedestrian access we have, the less circulation to businesses and residences.
We can certainly take that question back to the team and ask. I do not know for sure that the answer is yes or no at this moment, but we can take that back and discuss it with the city.
Can the construction team confirm whether or not they tore the asphalt off of White Street?
Right, there's Rich just confirming there is currently no asphalt. White Street has been demapped. That is no longer a city street. We will be, as part of the new facility design and construction, creating a pedestrian throughway, but that is currently part of the construction site. There's not a plan to make that a pedestrian throughway in the current site condition, but we can take this request back and discuss it with the city and get back to you, Tammy.
Thank you.
And we'll follow. John Lee?
Thank you, Senator. I wanted to follow up on what Tammy was saying, that we really want to urge the city to help us out here. You know, as much as you are stewards of your resources, we are stewards of our health and our well-being during this time that this potentially could be years before the first shovel is in the ground. We're looking at a potential of regaining 20,000 square feet of open plaza space that our community could definitely use. instead of having an 800-foot long barrier, as Tammy has put, we really are cut off from the west side. 800 feet is a long way to walk if you are a healthy person trying to get to the subway. So we want to restore that in a way that is the same things that they've done for Domino Park in Williamsburg, the same way that they did it for Dumbo when construction was happening. We want to be as equitable as a city as we can be, and not to deprive this community from the enjoyment of having temporary parks that are sprung up, the way that it is for other wealthier neighborhoods. So I think that as much as you are stewards of your resources, we are stewards of our health and our well-being. And I think that less than 1% of the budget of this particular project could be set aside to pave it, make it nice with lights so that it's safer, and it should be taken into consideration. I think it's the right way to go, and we have lots and lots of stakeholder support for this. So you'll be hearing more from us on what we'd like to see. Thank you.
Any response on that?
Thank you, Jan. The same response that we had when Tammy was asking about it. We will review and discuss with the city and get back to folks.
All right. Thank you. Alice?
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. There's a lot of questions I have, but I guess, critical to this, in addition to what Tammy and Jan have said in terms of the opening of White Street and the need for Laura Dodge to stay with us through this project, is just what we're looking for and how we're going to review what's coming down the pike. We've been asking for White Street to remain open since the project was delivered to us in 2016. And it wasn't an interim ask, it was a full ask. And what I'm talking about here is, when do we get to review the design? The RFP has been issued. The team is being selected according to you. This is done in spring of this year. And if I'm hearing you correctly, you're even, because of the design build process, that construction is looking in that time frame. Is that correct, that you're looking at the spring of 2025 to potentially begin construction? I guess that's my first question.
Not immediately. There will be a period in which the team needs to advance the design of the building. So we're going to start with conceptual design. There will be a community design input process. We will detail this more once we have the design builder on board. We'll come out to the community. We'll lay out the timeline of when we think we'll be ready to have design engagement meetings with the community, design workshops with the community. I can say right now, we will definitely be coming out, getting community feedback and input onto the design before the team submits for Public Design Commission's conceptual review. We'll be back again before we submit for the PDC preliminary review, and we will absolutely come back again and get more feedback before we submit for final review. So community design input will be part of this process, and it will be tied into the formal city design review processes.
There have been about 6 years of a lot of review of and considerations that this community has asked for in terms of the design. How can you describe whether or not that's been taken into consideration in your RFP, for example? That was all identified.
So yeah, that's a good question, and thanks for reminding folks. So there were earlier design input sessions that took place back in 2020, and that feedback was factored into the design guidelines that became part of the RFP. We also heard through our engagement over the subsequent years with the community, there was dissatisfaction with the way those workshops had taken place, and also just with the amount of time that had passed, we thought it was prudent to come back out and get more feedback from this community. So that was the workshops that we held in the fall of last year. Both we had an in-person workshop to get feedback on the design guidelines. We also provided an open window where all those materials were available in English and Chinese online to continue getting more online feedback from folks. So all of that feedback was rolled into the design guidelines document, which is part of the RFP and therefore part of the designer's contract documents. So the community's feedback has been documented and is part of all of the documents that the future design builder received. And I think it will be part of the design engagement process when we have them on board and they're ready to start meeting with the community, for them to demonstrate and talk about how all of that feedback has been reflected in their conceptual design.
Right, but is it fair to say that in having already assessed pretty much the full design of the building in terms of the 1,040 beds, is that correct? That's still the number of beds and the amount of space that you have and the materials of this, the price that you're negotiating with Tudor Perini, that much of this has already been confirmed as in design. And that what will the community have an opportunity to really opine on? I guess we're not going to be looking at height of the building or the materials or whether White Street remains open, I suspect. So I think it's at this point in the process that we should maybe push back the curtain a tad and allow for the community to kind of be updated to what point you are in the process as far as design. And I don't want to belabor this because there's a lot of other people I'm sure have questions, but it's something that I think we really need to look at. And in answer to your question of, how we put the NAB and CAB or whatever they're called meetings and integrate with this, I think that's something that we should make sure is done at the next meeting, a little bit more information on the next steps for the project.
Sure. I'll tell you what I can, which is that, yes, the scope of the design project, so the 1040 beds, that has been determined and that is set and that will not be changing. As far as the heights and the maximum envelope, so those things were codified by the 2019 ULURP decision. So the maximum envelope is set. We cannot exceed that maximum envelope, and the design team will do what they can to work, to work within that and to make the scale of the building as unobtrusive as possible. But those things were set by the 2019 ULURP. As far as where we're at with the design, again, we will be initiating the conceptual design process once the facility design builder is on board in the spring, and we'll be coming out to show the community those designs in advance of anything getting submitted for conceptual review by the city.
And what about the closing of White Street? Is that considered part of the RFP? That was sort of something that was already confirmed. I mean,
so White
demapped,
Street was White Street was demapped as part of the ULURP process. So that is set. However, it is part of the design guidelines. It's part of the scope of the project to have the White Street reopened for pedestrians through traffic and create a pedestrian arcade. So that will be part of the design, and that's definitely something that we want the community to be reviewing and providing feedback on. So things like the public realm, the street improvements, sidewalk conditions, the exterior of the building, the White Street arcade design, these are all things that we will be bringing to the community for review and feedback and input before we are submitting through the city's design review process.
Well, okay. I mean, I think most of this has already been completed. If I understand these processes in terms of the sort of input of where we can really have a say, I think it's helpful if you could come early and really allow us to begin to review these things. It would be, I think, helpful just for community engagement purposes, if nothing else, to sort of get us all on board as to what the reality of this will really be. Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks, Alice.
Thanks. And then just a reminder, anybody who does have a question or a comment, we've got about 11 minutes left in the scheduled window for this meeting. Please do raise your hands or otherwise let us know. And in the meantime, back to Tammy.
So I'm gonna tell Lauren, I don't think you were here in 2019 when we went through this, but the presentations from the city were very, very clear. And while the ULURP passed with a certain height limit, the goal and the promise from the city was to build as short as they could and not fill the entire thing. We were sold as a community, and that's the height limit, but we're not looking to build to that height. Hearing everything that you've said does not match with the spirit and tone of what the city said. Yes, we know what the ULURP height limit was, but in its selling to the community for approval was that's the total limit, but we wouldn't necessarily be building that high. So what we really would like to understand in the RFP was that preference put in there, because we don't know, and the community and the promises made to the community of potentially seeing if it could be smaller, utilizing other things. Is any of that in there, or is it just to the height and go?
Well, again, you're right. I was not here in 2019, but I was here last year when we did additional workshops on the design guidelines and got feedback from the community. The preference for the building to be as small as possible was made loud and clear, and that is part of the design guidelines document. The city's community's concerns around the height, and then a desire for the design build team to work within that envelope and to make it as small as they can. I can't make promises as to what the height of the building will be, except to say that legally they will abide by the ULURP decision and work within the maximum envelope prescribed by the 2019 ULURP. But yes, the community's preferences are documented clearly in the design guidelines document that is up for public review on our website and has been, since we completed those workshops last year. And that is part of the RFP documents that were included with everything that was sent over to the design builder.
Okay, good. All right, I see no other hands for questions or comments. Going once.
Hey, Brian, it looks
Rochelle's
like
been putting some in the
there's a
chat,
couple-
so I want to
yeah.
make sure yeah.
Okay, sorry, yes.
It's okay.
Yeah, there is a
Rochelle,
question.
Michelle, are you able to jump
sorry.
in and say them verbally for everybody? So,
And I'm also concerned that the note taker that you have isn't working.
We have our own note taker over here too.
yeah, I don't think that, I'm not sure that, I'm not sure the digital note taker that's been making comments is ours. So
It's Wellington's, but we got it, Tammy, and I can share notes if you want.
and of course, we also have a report, there's an actual recording of the whole thing as well. But yeah, Michelle, are you able to comment or should
Yes.
we?
Hi.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Sorry, I apologize. I have a really bad cough. Hi, Laura. I'm just going to verbalize my two questions that are in the comment, the chat box. Hi, Laura. Thank you for your work as an independent agent. While you were on site yesterday, did you observe the clouds of debris that residents, workers, patients, and staff regularly inhale? That's my first question. And then my second question is, I included the screenshot of the slide of the environmental monitoring plan. I just wanted to confirm if this image includes the current sensors already placed, or do they include the sensors that will be placed, that still need to be placed? Because the 2 vibration sensors and 1 dust sensor that was supposed to be placed at the health center, which is at the Chung Pak building, has not been installed yet.
Okay, we can speak quickly to the second point, and then I know your first question was directed towards Laura, not Lauren. So, Rich, do you want to clarify the image shown in the environmental monitor slide? That is the current placement of the monitors, but we are still working with the health clinic to install the additional monitors. Is that correct?
I'll hop in. This is Scott Croker from Gramercy. Yes, that is correct. Those are the current monitors installed. Not future monitors. That's the current status of the site.
So we're still working with you, Rochelle, on those that we do intend to install those. So, and I believe your first question was directed towards Laura and her experience on the site yesterday, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Hi, Rachel. So when we were at the site yesterday, it's obvious that with the blowers, the mister that's out there, the dust boss, if you will, whatever you want to call it, it's very difficult to distinguish between when you see that swirling up high, if that's mist or if it's dust or if it's a combination of both. So I think one of the things that I'm going to be looking at hard is when those observations are made, what do we see in terms of what's being picked up by the monitors, and are the monitors in the appropriate place? One of the recommendations I'm going to be making, which I haven't, made to anybody yet, but I'll tell you now, I think it's going to be helpful for everybody, including me and everyone looking at the data on these figures. And I know it's the terminology, the labeling of the monitors. I think, some of them they're changing, they move because, wind direction shifts, the work activities shift. But I think there might be a way to make the nomenclature a little bit more meaningful for the reader of the reports. And that includes vibration monitors that are not necessarily in locations that are load-bearing walls, so that when you're looking at vibration levels, you know that it's not necessarily an issue. So these are things that might be helpful for everyone. But to answer your question, when I was on site, after everybody left, I took a walk on site with the Gramercy team and also with DDC and with the AECOM Hill representatives and walked through the work area. And I was actually comfortable with the fact that everything was misted, everything was wet. There was no dust kicked up when you were walking through. And my boots were covered with like a crusty, you know, crushed concrete type soil mixture after the site walk was done, because you're basically keeping everything wet, which is what's critical for management of dust. I mean, it's the number one means of minimizing dust is minimizing the generation of airborne particulates. So keeping it moist, keeping it, you know, down, and so that you're not getting the wind kicking it up is really the primary best management practice for sites undergoing, you know, any kind of demolition or concrete crushing, soil disturbance. So we're going to be looking hard at it. And I understand the visual of it and the optics of it. And one of the things that's so critically important is the optics of the community are very real. And I think that's one of the things that, you know, from my vantage point as independent community monitor, you know, I'm looking at that and I'm understanding why you're thinking that that's an issue. So I'm bringing that back to, you know, part of the recommendations that we're going to be making is how do we manage that? And one of the ways is to try to link those observations with the actual data. So I can't speak to exactly how that's going to fall out yet, because no pun intended, because, you know, it's only been, you know, about a week that we've been on the project, and we're still getting up to speed. And I've just seen the site as of yesterday. But I can tell you that we're very comfortable that the predominant approach being used is consistent with the best management practices that are out there. If there can be improvements to it, then they, you know, we'll point those out and we'll make suggestions and recommendations. And in the meantime, I think what's been happening needs to continue, which is to have the community verbalize these concerns immediately when they take place, because it's critical that they be timely, because it's very hard to go back and backfill information. If there's a concern that someone raises, you can go out there with handheld instruments and verify what's actually happening in real time. So there's ways to be able to address the concerns as long as they're being immediately relayed. So if there's a mechanism, which I believe from what I'm hearing from the team, including the community groups, that there is a mechanism. We just need to make sure that those concerns are being relayed right away. And then there's other things that I think that can be done, and I have already a list of things that I'm formulating to relay to the project team and also to the community. But what I observed yesterday, it's very difficult to discern if it's dust or if it's mist, and I think that's one of the big aspects of this that we have to further evaluate. But everyone on this call has probably heard this from a number of different walks of life and things that go on in the world. Everything is data driven. The data are really what's critical. The visual optics are important, but they have to be backed up by data, because we have to be able to make decisions relative to protection of the community that are based on facts and based on data. And optics are so critical, a critical piece of that, but it still has to be factored in and supported by data. So that's what we need to look at, and that's what I'm going to be looking at. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you,
Laura,
Laura.
obviously you can't be on the site all the time, but you do have,
Right.
you will have some capacity. And I think everybody appreciated going there, but I think there was also some awareness that that was sort of a scheduled visit. You will have
Yes.
some ability to visit the site kind of without prior announcement.
Right. Yeah, thank you, Senator. Our scope includes a once a month visit, which will be random. It will not be, you know, we'll have to check in with the construction office, obviously, for protocol purposes, and also with the health and safety officer at the site, but they will not be pre-scheduled visits. And we will be using handheld instruments for noise and dust to verify, you know, air quality and noise levels, you know, outside the site, because that's really the focus for community protection. Although again, because the work is so close to the property boundaries, it makes it a challenge. And that's one of the things that I think that everybody is very well aware of, including the team. So, but yes, we will be out there at least once a month. That is what the current scope calls for.
I also just want to offer a point of clarification to a comment that Jen put in the chat about having lost 24 months of data. So to clarify, there's no data has been lost. All of the past data that we've been doing since the start of the project has been collected and has been shared with Laura and her team. So there's no data that was lost. Thank you.
Okay, so we are at just about a time. I will just note, first of all, are you set, Rochelle? Okay. Just to say, just to note, we also have been working with Charles B. Wang and Chung Pak and the city on, issues related to conditions in those buildings, and also some money that was, intended to go to Chung Pak from the agreements in 2019. We've had some fruitful conversations about, including HPD, who I don't think is represented here, but is involved in making Chung Pak whole. So I just thought it was worth mentioning that. I know a lot of people have to jump. I think with that, I will adjourn unless anybody has any burning questions. We'll get back to you with a next meeting date and a next agenda.
Yeah. Brian, if you can just, also at some point, if somebody could just indicate how Laura's information is going to be provided to the public. She used to come to Community Board 1 Environmental Protection, but in other words, is it just through these meetings? Where will these updates take place? And also how we're going to resolve the sort of next steps for the borough-based jail meetings in terms of the full picture as to forward designs and
yeah, we will. I don't think those questions don't need to. We will be seeking to follow up on all the items that have been raised at this meeting in advance. And we don't have to wait for the next meeting to get answers, but we'll be seeking answers and follow up in real time as we go forward. Laura, just any answer to Alice's question about how folks will hear from you?
Yeah, the weekly reports that we'll be issuing, since we just got on board, I'm not exactly sure what the mechanism is. We will be issuing it to the DDC, and then from there, I'm assuming it's going to be posted on the website, but that's, that has to be confirmed. Lauren, I don't know if you know, or because we just haven't gotten there yet. I mean, I have a draft report and I have some questions on the content of it and how to address, some of the data, which again, because we're not on the site all the time, I have to integrate and discuss some of that with the AECOM Hill team. So, but I'm assuming that that's how it's going to work, is that they will be issued through the website. But again, that's something to be determined. And we can likely circulate it. We can likely circulate it directly to people who are on the list for this meeting as well. But we'll follow up with everybody and we will get a clear answer to that, what to look for, where you'll find it, and all of that very soon. And again, thank you, Laura. Laura's just very recently on board here, so we are still sorting out some of these details. Yeah.
Okay, we are losing folks, so I think with that, I will adjourn unless.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good day.
Thank you.